Harvest. The planet Harvest is a major supplier of foodstuffs to the Razelhag district, and therefore was an important objective of Operation Götterdämmerung. The 4th Donegal Guards, the 1st Lyran Regulars, the 3rd Lyran Regulars, and almost 40 infantry and tank regiments dropped onto the continent of Ohio, where most of the planet's major cities and industries were located. Opposing them were 2 mercenary mech regiments, the 5th Amphigean Light Assault Group and Helmut's Hermits, as well as 20 regiments of infantry and armour. Any doubts that the Lightning Companies would prove their worth were forgotten on Harvest. On 2 occasions, during the battle for Dangalobi Fields and during the deciding battle for Puso Hill, the swift mechs of all 3 Lightning Companies exploited weaknesses in the enemy lines. After fighting through, they created havoc in the rear areas of the extremely surprised enemy. Basiliano. Basiliano is a small, water-poor world that orbits a tiny star. If Basiliano were anywhere else in the inner sphere, it would be considered an insignificant backwater, a place where people go to get lost. But Basiliano is a border world, and so the Draconis Combine assigned one of its best mech regiments to defend it. Colonel Lloyd McGavin's regiment of the Night Stalkers is notorious amongst Lyrans because of its many raids into the Commonwealth. The 24th and the 25th Arcturan Guards and the mercenary Blackhearts were looking for revenge on the Night Stalkers, but spent the first 3 weeks being outmaneuvered by the Combine mechs. Were it not for the Lightning Companies of the 2 Guards regiments, the Commonwealth forces would have been completely outclassed. The Night Stalkers ran out of room, though, near the city of Padua. While fending off the Lightning Company of the 24th Arcturan Guards, Colonel McGavin neglected the Lightning Company of the 25th Guards, which had been transported ahead of them. Surprised, the Night Stalkers made the mistake of slugging it out with 2 companies. The heavy mechs of the 24th Arcturan Guards and the Blackhearts caught up and encircled the Night Stalkers. By sacrificing a company of heavier mechs, the rest of the Night Stalkers managed to escape. Seeing no hope of holding the planet, the Night Stalkers then evacuated Basiliano. Wheel. Wheel was the one place where the war was fought with skill, compassion, and honour. The LCAF sent 2 mercenary mech regiments, the 1st Nahal Raiders and Hansen's Rough Riders, to take Wheel, which was defended by the Tooth of Ymir. The planet's normal infantry and tank regiments were missing, because a month earlier a bomb had exploded in the capital city of Hub that killed one of the Coordinator's concubines. Investigations pointed to the garrison forces, though the bomb had actually been the work of the Tia, so when further investigations failed to find a guilty party, the Coordinator, in a fit of anger and extreme stupidity, ordered the entire garrison transferred to Luthien, so Subhash Indraha himself could cajole the truth out of the soldiers. Colonel Davis Heller, commander of the Tooth of Ymir, was left with 10 militia regiments, made up of greying grandparents and their giggling grandchildren. His entire aerospace force then consisted of 6 aging Sholagars who were flown by amateurs. When the Nahal Raiders and the Rough Riders hit their drop zones, Colonel Heller would send them a communique, explaining his predicament, and requesting that the fight for the planet be fought with the old rules: mechs against mechs, warriors against warriors. Let honour among professionals save the lives of the innocents. Without hesitation, Colonel Gerhard Hansen and Lieutenant General William Matthews accepted the rules, ordering their infantry and tank regiments to stay put. The 3 mech regiments would fight for near 3 days on Red Desert Flats, the floor of a dormant volcano. Finally, the Raiders and the Rough Riders surrounded the Tooth, which had lost a battalion. Raising their mech's arms in salute, the commanders of the 3 regiments ordered a ceasefire and conference. The fight for Wheel would end when Colonel Heller saluted the other 2 commanders, who, in return, saluted him. All 3 regiments then returned, and the 2 sides slowly parted. The Tooth of Ymir would retreat off Wheel, and the Raiders and the Rough Riders quietly assumed control of the planet. Marthik. Marthik presented the LCAF with a chance to capture Theodore Kurita, commander of the 11th Legion of Vega and heir apparent of Coordinator Takashi Kurita. To capture or kill Takashi's son would put the Combine into a political frenzy. The LCAF devised what it considered to be a foolproof plan to take Theodore Kurita out of the picture. But it made one mistake. It underestimated Theodore Kurita's abilities as a leader. The 11th and the other legions of Vega were dumping grounds for malcontents and misfits in the DCMS, and Theodore Kurita was placed in command of these as punishment. Though they were malcontents, the warriors of the 11th were skilled fighters, and Theodore Kurita himself a talented commander. The LCAF assigned the elite 4th Sky Rangers and 25 infantry and tank regiments to conquer Marthic and capture the prize from the multicoloured nightmare mechs of the 11th Legion of Vega and 12 other regiments spread out to defend the planet's major continent of North Galfrey. The Rangers approached the planet and dropped without opposition because the Legion's fighters weren't space-worthy. Troubles for the Commonwealth began soon after. Because of the Sky Rangers' affiliation with the Lestrade family, the Archon's bitterest political foe, the mech unit had always resented Davian changes in the LCAF. This became apparent when the Rangers disobeyed the battle plan and left their infantry and armour behind. Colonel Kurita and his mechs met the Rangers near a small mining town called Massingham. Expecting the Rangers to be accompanied by plenty of support, he'd arranged his own troops in long skirmish lines. He hoped to sting the enemy and then disappear into the woods behind him. When Colonel Kurita realised that the Commonwealth mechs were alone, he quickly changed his plans. A feint by his mechs stalled the Rangers long enough for the infantry and armour to retreat into the woods, and then with a last salvo of mech fire, the Legion turned and fled the field. The Rangers proudly radioed back to the other Commonwealth regiments that they had routed the Legion and were about to capture Colonel Kurita. Supremely confident now, they entered the dark forest and promptly got lost, just as Colonel Kurita had hoped. For 2 hours they stumbled around, looking for a path. Just as they were finally emerging, they received reports from 2 Commonwealth regiments trying to take Getha's Jewel, a small city just 60 kilometres to the west. The colonel of one of the regiments said, in a report filled with sarcasm for the Rangers, that the supposedly demoralised Combine mechs were now having a wonderful time running around, shooting and stepping on the tanks of her regiment. Shamed, the Rangers returned to the original battle plan, which included the use of heavy aerospace fighters to keep track of the Legion. When this proved more successful, and the Commonwealth forces soon had the Legion and its attendant regiments fleeing east, away from their dropships. Battles here were short, with the Commonwealth's numerical superiority and love for a slugfest taking a heavy toll on the combined forces. Despite the losses, Colonel Kurita was showing great skill at doing extensive damage and escaping to fight again. He showed not only superior tactical ability, but also apparent charisma, and his troops. Intercepting communications would paint a picture of an officer who forgave lapses in military protocol, would willingly listen to his officers from infantry to tank regiments, and who seemed to have a genuine concern for his men, a far cry from the usual tyrannical officers of the DCMS. Battlefield brilliance can only go so far, though, in offsetting superior numbers and firepower. Despite his best efforts, Colonel Kurita couldn't prevent his mech regiment from being ground down to a company of able mechs and another of damaged mechs, most of which couldn't fight. Realising now there was little hope, Colonel Kurita chose a spot for an honourable end, the gentle green hills outside Sitka, a small coastal city. Toward dusk, as the first columns of Commonwealth reconnaissance tanks were appearing, Colonel Kurita received surprising news. A Union-class dropship had crash-landed at Sitka's airport a month prior. It had been repaired, but had been forgotten in the chaos of the invasion. Though sceptical because there were no Combine jump ships in the system, Colonel Kurita gave in to the pleadings of his command staff and agreed to flee. To survive, he had to stall the Commonwealth long enough to enter Sitka and board the dropship, and then escape before the enemy realised. The next morning, then, the battle would commence. To the Rangers it seemed that Colonel Kurita was holding his company of mechs in reserve, waiting for the appropriate time to use them. But that time came when a Commonwealth tank regiment broke through the lines and raced towards Sitka. The Legion's mechs responded, as did the Rangers, by pursuing through the line behind the tanks. The charging Rangers didn't notice that the Combine mechs were using only a few of their weapons, and that some of their arms seemed to flail about lifelessly. When the Sky Rangers had closed to within punching range and one of them reached out to grab an arm of a Legion mech, it yanked away a sheet metal copy, showing the Rangers that they'd been fooled. Now far above Marthic, a Union-class dropship with hastily painted Commonwealth markings, was heading for the Nadir jump point, and there, a Lyran Scout-class jump ship, one of the Pony Express vessels used to carry reports and orders to and from the front, waited. Happy at the news that they were receiving from the planet at the time, the jump ship crew didn't get suspicious when the approaching dropship failed to identify itself and its purpose. They just assumed an officer was hitching a ride back to the Commonwealth. Colonel Kurita's personal guards would then seize the ship's crew with little trouble, and with less effort, the guards coerced the crew to take them back to Vega. Other early action. The 8th Donegal Guards invaded the planet Moritz, defended by the 5th Sunjang Academy cadre. As hoped, the cadre was under strength because of recent graduations and transfers. The fight for the planet was fierce, but quick. It ended when the guards broke through the cadre and drove for New Kofton, the capital of Moritz. The 5th Sunjang retreated from Moritz, with almost half of its complement killed, missing, or wounded. The 1st Sunjang training cadre suffered a similar fate at the hands of the 15th Lyran regulars. The Commonwealth forces invading Weingarten found out the 1st Sunjang battalion was filled with green troops and were unfit for duty. The remaining 2 battalions had been stationed at separate bases on the planet. The heaviest fighting would occur just outside the coastal city of Busan Bay, where a Kuritan tank regiment attempted to prevent a battalion of Lyran mechs from entering the city until the last mech of the 1st Sunjang had been evacuated. On Candice, the 26th Lyran Guards faced the mercenary St. Cyr Heavy Assault Group in a campaign marked by heavy mech charges. The 26th caught and mauled the 2nd Battalion of the St. Cyr on the frozen plains of Isaac. Fearing further damage, the rest of the St. Cyr HAG fled the planet. The 10th Lyran Guards, commanded by Colonel Friedrich Steiner, was assigned to take Karbala, which was defended by Vandelay's Valkyries and 12 infantry and armour regiments. Colonel Steiner showed how much he thought of his cousin's military innovations when he left his supporting regiments behind to attack the Valkyries alone. If he were less skilled, his rash action would have cost his regiment dearly. As it was, though, the 10th sustained more damage than most Commonwealth regiments that saw twice as much action. The Valkyries took their dead with them when they retreated from Karbala. The RCTs of the 30th Lyran Guard and the 10th Donegal Guard appeared in the New Caledonia system on August 22nd. Facing them was the 2nd Anting Legion and a larger-than-expected number of aerospace fighters. Surprise, though, was total. The Lyran Guards landed north of the Legion, stationed at the planet's capital and major industrial centre of Redfev, while the Donegal Guards landed south. The Anting lost more than 20% of its equipment before it escaped from the planet. Though campaigns for several key worlds were continuing, the initial invasions had captured more territory than anyone thought possible. Besides those already discussed, the LCAF also seized the worlds of Al-Hila, Kamlan, Diost, Hyperion, Jabuka, Ko, Orestes, Ramsau, Sabik, Shaula, Shinoa, and Volders. The LCAF had also damaged some very good DCMS regiments, and in some cases, Combine regiments had escaped with only half of their remaining forces. It's difficult to say who was more shocked by the initial success of the operation, the military of House Kurita or the High Command of the Lyran Commonwealth. For the DCMS, the losses took a psychological toll as well. Combine propaganda had always boasted that the Lyrans might be skilled at the less honourable task of trading goods, but they could never fight with skill or courage. When the LCAF forced Combine troops to retreat, several soldiers, particularly the officer elite, committed seppuku, or ritual suicide, to atone for this defeat at the hands of inferiors. This happened with devastating effect on Jabuka when the 19th Arcturian Guards, commanded by Lieutenant Colonel Yvonne Deltra, bested the 5th Razelhag Regulars, commanded by General Hichi Kunichuan, in a minor skirmish. Shocked and shamed at having been defeated by a Lyran woman, the general would commit seppuku, leaving command to his executive officer, who was such a poor tactician that the 5th had to abandon Jabuka a week later. Only an order from the coordinator forbidding seppuku prevented more of the DCMS's best officers from killing themselves. On other worlds like Ko, Sabek, and Hyperion, Kuritan units of questionable loyalty yielded without much fight.